Hi folks, welcome to another podcast, or whatever it is that I call these things these days. I've got another guest on for you today. Actually, it's a person whose name is probably quite familiar at the moment with what's going on and sticking to the same general theme of things, which is sort of dominating our lives at the moment. I've brought Dr. Andrew Kaufman on to have a bit of a chat about things. I'm sure you've seen a few of his interviews. He's been making a lot of waves about what's going on, and he's a good voice to have on the team speaking about this. So welcome to, I don't even know what to call it anymore, Andrew. I don't even, it's not really a show anymore, but welcome to the Crow House. Thanks for coming on and having a chat.
Yeah, anytime, Max. Thanks for inviting me on.
It's we actually met in Acapulco in 2019, and I was in a terribly jet-lagged state after being 38 hours late on my travel. I seem to have these incredible travel experiences where I'm just, 2 days late in arriving on these short trips I'm supposed to do. So we met there in 2019, and I barely remember it, unfortunately. But yeah, thanks for coming on. So listen, yeah, let's get right down to it. I mean, this whole pandemic, I mean, it's obviously a pandemic. It's obviously been well in the making. All you got to do is look at the WHO documents, look at some of the plans they put out. I mean, you can look at that one that I think it was that guy, someone Vox put out in 2010 when he talked about the lockstep document. You can see
the Rockefeller Foundation.
Yeah, and you can see the WHO document that talked about a world at risk that came out last year, where they talked about this whole lockdown. You just got to go to the World Economic Forum website and look at the response plan they've got for COVID. I mean, this must have taken years to put together, so this is definitely all part of the plan. But getting right down to it, I mean, the whole concept of this COVID-19 terrible coronavirus sweeping the world, this horrible pandemic, I don't even believe that there is a real pandemic at all. The whole concept of this COVID-19. What are your views on this? Do you think there's a real pandemic and a real virus that's actually out there killing people?
No, I agree with you fully. I don't see any evidence of either a pandemic illness or any evidence of any new virus that's been isolated. And certainly there's been...
And you're like a medical doctor. I mean, you've done years of exactly this, so, just give us a bit of a rundown on what your perspective is on what they're really running here and what they're doing and what this is all about.
Yeah, sure. Well, basically, what happened for me is that when things started back in December in China, I just recognized that something was not right. How they were responding to it was unprecedented. And so I started looking into things, and after a while, I started looking at the papers that they claimed to show a virus. And of course, I looked at a lot of websites that were keeping mortality data. And what I found out is sort of simultaneously that there was no evidence of any big numbers of people dying beyond usual. And when I looked at the papers where they claimed to find this virus, and by the way, there's no paper that shows based on its experiment that this virus causes anything. So there's not one paper in the conclusion that said, as a result of this study, we've determined that this virus is the cause of this disease. So that's not even stated in the literature as a conclusion. But if you look at the methods that they use to supposedly isolate viruses, they're doing no such thing whatsoever. And this was really something that I learned about only in studying this illness, because I had looked into germ theory, and I knew germ theory had lots of experiments that disproved it, and that it was something that was pervasive in medicine. But I never really looked closely at these virus papers. But what I've ultimately come to learn is that they've discovered a technique that essentially has these culture cells decay, and they say that that's proof that a virus is causing the decay of those cells. But in actuality, they've never run a control experiment, And what they're doing is taking those cells and giving them inadequate nutrition and exposing them to toxic chemicals. And so that's the reason the cells are decaying, and that's the only thing that they say that proves a virus. So they've not actually isolated any virus whatsoever. They have shown that they can do this isolation technique in bacterial viruses. They call them bacteriophages, and they've shown that they can use this technique to isolate exosomes. And the technique is fairly simple. You just filter out these small particles, and then you put them through a centrifuge to have them segregate together based on their density. And then you pull a syringe or a pipette, and you can look at them under the microscope. You can characterize them chemically. You can take out the genetic material and sequence it. And they've done these experiments for exosomes and bacteriophages, but they've never done it for a virus. And the simple reason is because there must not be any virus that exists that causes disease. So they have this other procedure that just shows damage to cells in a culture, and they say that that's evidence of a virus. And it's really quite astounding when I uncovered this, because it's not just in the studies for the SARS-CoV-2 virus that they say is associated with COVID-19, but it's true for every single virus paper that I've looked at for any type of virus. So really, there's really no evidence that any virus that is alleged to cause a disease has ever been isolated or proven to cause any disease whatsoever.
So and yet here we see this response, which is unprecedented. And the interesting thing, like you mentioned, exosomes, and in one of the first discussions that I heard you talk about this, you mentioned the fact that, well, actually, when you look at an exosome and you look at its makeup and you look at the way it reacts and its characteristics, and then you look at COVID-19, where you go, well, hey, it's actually exactly the same thing. So they've kind of just got this natural part of our immune system, which is, I think they're called endomes, are they? When they're in the cell, and then if they get toxic, they leave and become exosomes. Have I got that right? And they sort of carry that with them. But
essentially, you're correct.
It's the same thing. So they've basically taken this normal part of our immune system, which is just a response to toxicity in the cells, and categorized it as this terrible pandemic. And it's going to appear in basically anybody who's stressed or got toxicity in the cells. So it's a total win-win situation for them. But there appears that there is no virus at all. They've simply, re-diagnosed or relabeled part of our immune system. And the response has been like, it's been over the top, absolutely over the top. And even when you look at the death figures for this year, there's less deaths this year than there has been for the last 5 years. And no one seems to be dying of anything else anymore. But that's what they've done, isn't it? They basically recategorized exosomes, haven't they?
Well, essentially, see what they're seeing under the microscope, it could very well be exosomes, because they've pretty much created a recipe to make exosomes, because they're usually using monkey kidney cells for this purpose, and they're mixing it with antibiotics, and it's well known that antibiotics induce exosomes. But the thing is that these cells are basically dying cells, and they're putting out all kinds of debris. And early on in the study of virology, they actually really wrestled with this problem and pretty much gave up on trying to find a virus until this new technique that I described was invented. So we could very well be seeing pictures of exosomes when we see those pictures, but they could also be other kinds of cellular debris particles. The thing is, we just don't know, because they've never taken those particles and then purified them and characterized exactly what they are. So that's really never been done. And what you're talking about with the test is a little bit different, because the PCR test, which is the main test, it doesn't test for a virus at all. What that tests for is a sequence of RNA, which is genetic material. And the way they obtain that is also they take the impure sample, basically like the lung fluid in this case, from some people who are sick, or possibly a throat swab, and they amplify short little sequences. And sequences that they're specifically looking for, mostly because they have this library of gene sequences of viruses. But the thing is, if you go back, they've always characterized them this way. So they've never once had a intact virus particle and then sliced it open and taken the RNA out and done a sequence from end to end. That's never been done. What they do instead is they take this impure sample and they look for specific sequence that they've pre-identified as being viral in nature from this database. And then what they're doing is amplifying these short little sequences, maybe 150 to 250 base pairs, and they're splicing them together into this one long strand of 30,000, which they say is the viral genome. But it's actually just this Frankenstein type of assembly of all these little pieces that we don't even have any proof they're related. They could even come from different types of cells or different creatures. And when there's gaps, they're basically using sequences that they get from that database of other viruses that are also put together in this Frankenstein type way. And they sew all those together, you know, and say that this is the genome sequence of this virus. And that's the procedure. And they're testing for something from that, but we don't really know what it is, except it's most likely our own sequences. So that's why there's so many positive results, because they're essentially testing our own genetic sequences.
This is crazy. This is not unlike what's his name, Tim Ferguson, with his computer models from Imperial College. You get the data out of the model that you put into the model. And with what you're describing there, they're getting the test results based on what they're putting in, the material they're putting in there. This is crazy. How could you even see this as any type of test for viruses? It doesn't make sense at all. And this is what they've got this entire world lockdown on. This is unbelievable when you explain it like that. Why aren't there more doctors speaking out about this? I mean, you got the what is he called? I don't even know what he's called. The guy who does health, controls the health. I can't think of his name at the moment. But you Fauci, all these doctors, all these main people who are in control of the health system of their own countries, and what you're saying here, it's so obvious that this is all cooked up. And, you know, why aren't there more doctors speaking out about it? Why aren't there more doctors on the ground speaking out about it, do you think?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons. I mean, one thing is just like you're talking about challenging a deeply, deeply held belief about germ theory, that germs cause disease. And, you know, this is something ingrained in us since we're children. And if you're a doctor, I mean, you're the representative of germ theory, because really the whole modern medical paradigm is based on germ theory in a sense, because it's the warfare model. It says that disease comes from outside of us. It's beyond our control. And we need to rely on the healthcare system to give the magic bullet, or our immune system to basically be a military defense strategy, right? So everything has this warfare model, and this is a deeply, deeply held belief. So for most healthcare professionals, they may realize something is not right with what's going on right now, but they're not thinking about questioning germ theory or the existence of viruses. It's just too deeply ingrained. There have been a few people who have been open to that. But then the other thing is that these papers are written in a different language. Like, it's taken me quite a bit of effort and time to be able to read these papers and decipher what's going on. And most of the time when people actually want to debate me or challenge me, it's just because they don't really understand exactly what's written in these papers. And so it's, you know, it's a big barrier. And I think it's purposely like this. And I remember even when I was in, molecular biology earlier in my career, and I was doing a little bit of research and reading, journal articles, I remember some grad students saying something about that virology is written in a different language and you can't understand a virology paper. And, now I understand what they're talking about, because not only is the language different, but when you read the procedures, you're like, this isn't even scientific. I mean, they don't separate variables. They don't use negative controls in their experiments, right? So some basic principles of experimentation are just totally devoid from their procedures. And they just do the same exact procedure in every paper. I mean, I can't tell you how many papers I've read that claim to isolate a virus, and it's the same exact thing every time. So it's like, if you're one of these researchers, you got a recipe to get a paper published, because you just follow this procedure. Go to some exotic animal, get a sample, go to somebody who appears to have a different illness, get a sample, and you can magically make a virus out of their genetic material and reconstruct it and get a great publication.
That shows exactly how the programming works. It's remarkable when you think about it that way. You're given a certain experiment to base, or a certain procedure to base your experiments on, but you don't ever check into the procedure to begin with. You just take it at face value that it's apparently what you're supposed to do. But when you look at it, I mean, even if you were someone who could think clearly, I mean, when you're doing this and you're carrying out these experiments the way you explained, you must be seeing what you're doing. I mean, you're creating anything. It could end up whatever. You're just cooking it up yourself. It's quite remarkable. But when you look at the level of response to this, and what they're saying, and everything they want to do, the response, the isolation, the self-isolation that they're even foisting on children now. I saw a most disturbing video of welcome back to school in Quebec, and what they're going to be doing to these children, the social isolation, even in grade 1, is psychological abuse. It really is. And when you look at this response, and the whole goal of it seems to be vaccination of the entire world. That seems to be the goal. I mean, this whole virus, whole concept of a pandemic has been cooked up just because they want to give everybody the jab. So the question is, what's in the vaccine? And what is that going to actually be doing? What are your views on that, on the vaccine? Do they want to cook up for this virus that doesn't appear to be even possible to exist?
Well, they're using a new technology for this vaccine, which they say allows them to develop it more rapidly. But, they've developed it in record time. I mean, obviously, they have developed this before the pandemic actually came to fruition. But what these vaccines are is they have DNA, and they using this technology called microporation, where they apply an electric current through 2 additional needles, and it causes little holes to open up in your cells so that this foreign DNA can go into your cells and basically turn you into a genetically modified organism. Now, they say that the gene is the gene of a virus, so we're going to have our own cells making virus proteins, and somehow that's going to trigger an immune response. I don't buy that at all. So what these genes are, I don't know. I have some guesses because I know one of the goals of the vaccine is for infertility, right? Because it's all about population reduction. I did hear of this one gene called VMAT2, I believe, that was disclosed through maybe a leaked presentation at one of the secret government agencies, talking about a research program with this gene VMAT2 that when it's highly expressed, it leads to religious zealotry, they said. So they were talking about it to basically vaccinate a whole population to root out a few fundamental extremist terrorists. But I think what they were really talking about is getting people who have religious beliefs, because people with strong religious beliefs and spiritual beliefs and values are much more resistant to the compliant, materialist, authority, technocratic machine. And so if there's a way to suppress that and make people more docile and compliant, I mean, it's hard to imagine that they could be much more docile and compliant than they are now. But, that could be a strategy as well. But, I think it's really just guesswork until they start rolling this out and we see how it affects people.
Have you heard of Hydrogel? Have you heard of that?
It sounds familiar in terms of water.
Hydrogel is it's a nano substance that's developed by DARPA, which is able to fuse with your cells, literally fuse with you. It goes in and it interfaces with your cells and it becomes part of you. And it can be read signals to and from. So it's like an interface into. There's actually a report that was put out recently by a lady called Celeste Solum. She's quite religious. I mean, God bless her. She's very religious, though. The last part of the talk is the last 10 minutes is quite religious, but she's a great researcher. Apparently she used to work in one of these weapons development places, and she's a bit of an insider, and she's been reporting on hydrogel. I'll send you a link after the talk, and I'd be interested in you having a look at that. And because the possibility of this actually being in the vaccines, there's this particular nano stuff that DARPA's been working on. And by the way, they've been still working on this while this lockdown's in place. When you think about it, only essential services are functioning, and yet the development of this hydrogel by DARPA is seen as an essential service for national security. And with the separation of the children, programming the people to be separated, everyone to be separated, one-way footpaths, everyone 1.5 meters apart, 2 meters apart from each other all the time. Forget about having children anymore. They want all the next generation of children to be, I would suggest, vaccinated with this hydrogel and interfaced into the matrix, part of the AI machine, as soon as they're born, and keep them all separated from each other. So basically, the response to this COVID-19 is to remove every aspect of humanity from humankind, keep everybody completely separated, and make them, fit them with this interface into the machine, whether they want it or not. I'd be really interested on you looking into that and seeing how they may be incorporating that into the vaccines, because what you're saying about modifying our DNA, this fits in perfectly with what hydrogel can actually do. And there's some papers on it, some DARPA papers you can go and look at yourself on it. I'll send you some links after the talk. And
Max,
for anyone listening, I'll put a link to Celeste Solum's report on that below this video as well, so you can go and check it out yourself.
I think it's possible it's actually already in vaccines, because are you familiar with the Italian researchers who did the electron microscope study? So this was just a couple of years ago. They basically bought every vaccine that's on the market, like a vial of each one, and they looked at these under a scanning tunneling electron microscope. That they were basically researchers in that technology. And I'm not sure how they got the idea for this, but maybe it's related to what you were talking about. And under the microscope, they saw in every single vaccine sample all these nanometallic complexes. And these were all different kinds of metals, some of them toxic, like antimony and lead. But there was tungsten. I mean, almost everything on the periodic table was represented there. And they had no explanation for why these would be in the vaccines. They called the manufacturers and were given no explanation. And then about 6 months later, their laboratory was raided by the Italian police, and all their computers and data were confiscated. So fortunately, this still, was published in a scientific journal. That's how I know about it. And I'd be happy to provide a copy. But I wonder if this actually represented the same technology that you're talking about, and maybe it's already inside many people's bodies at this moment.
It could be. I mean, that report that she was talking about, I think the last DARPA report, or the main DARPA report she was referencing, I think came out in 2016, and they'd already been working on it well before then. So yeah.
So the timing fits, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's what they're doing. And you're actually probably pretty lucky to be alive. You said earlier on you were a microbiologist. We had a spate of deaths of microbiologists a few years ago. It seemed to be one of the most dangerous jobs to have on Earth. It seemed like the life expectancy of microbiologists was worse than people who go diving for sharks. It was crazy. We had a year of them where there was all those microbiologists died. Everyone was wondering what was going to happen. Was there going to be some sort of a pandemic? And here we are, amazing, huh? Remember that?
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, I'm not a microbiologist, though.
I mean, you said you studied
I studied molecular biology.
Biology.
Slightly different.
Yeah, no worries.
But
remember that though, when all those microbiologists suddenly started dying, popping off, mysterious car accidents and like the most ridiculous deaths, getting caught in roller door or whatever. A couple of years ago, there was. I don't even know whether it might have been 30 or 40, could have even been up as many as 100 of them died over about.
Really? Wow. No,
yeah.
I wasn't aware of that. I know there's a lot of alternative health practitioners who have died under mysterious circumstances.
Yeah, alternative health practitioners and microbiologists. You could probably do a search on who's killing all the microbiologists or dead microbiologists or something. And there's a whole list of them. They all died within about a 2-year period, about probably 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. So all leading up to this event, they've been really planning this for a long time, brother. They really have. And
I wonder if they were people who.
You go on.
Oh, I was just saying, I wonder if the microbiologists who perished were ones who were questioning germ theory.
Could have been. I mean, I'd say that they were people who would have been able to call this out and say, hang on, you can't lock the world down over this this so-called virus. I mean, the response to this, I think, has woken a lot of people up. But, and personally, I think, we're having the wrong response to it in our response to what these people are doing. I mean, I see, even under their guidelines that they've said, even if this was a real virus and it was a real pandemic, the death figures have been so low and the response has been so dramatic that all of these governments are in breach of their duty of care, and what they are doing as a response to this by isolating people and all the stuff they're doing and making people wear masks, which is just bad for your health anyway, it's a crime against humanity, and we need to see it as that. All of our governments are all working together, colluding to commit a massive crime against humanity that is going to end up in the suffering of so many people. And I think it's so important that people see this for what it is and call this out for what it is and start to push back in the right way. But the question is, what way is that? Of course, I think the first step is to bring this type of information to people. But what do you think we should do as a response to this? And how do you see the government's actions in this regard, Andy?
Yeah, well, I completely agree with you. I mean, clearly this is a totally different purpose, and it's for the purpose of control. And, the vaccines are an integral part of that, as you mentioned. So what I've been doing since the beginning, and I will continue to do, and I think this is really the best approach that we can have, is to simply not follow any of these rules or laws. I'm not even sure if they're legally valid under all of the circumstances. But I feel that, we have the right to be free and make our own decisions about how we're going to put ourselves at risk, even if there is a real pandemic. I still want to be able to make the choice if I want to put myself and my family at a certain level of risk or not, because there's always a trade-off. And so what I'm doing is just going about my business the same as I ever have. Obviously, there are some places I can't go right now and things I can't do, but I'm trying my best to maintain a social life and get together with people. I try to make eye contact with everyone. I never wear a mask. I respect other people's boundaries, but if someone is approachable, I don't follow any social distancing protocols. If I get lucky enough to bump into someone in public, I make sure actually to display that I'm not following these protocols and try to, give a hug or a handshake in public and show that I'm not afraid when I do those things and that that's the way to live life. And so, what I'd really love to see is a group of people get together with a business owner and go and open up their business and be patrons of the business and have a little talk and get to know each other and have refreshments, or open up a church and have everyone congregate in the church and have the sermon that is applicable to everyone who comes, and be like human beings again. And I think if we start doing that, then everything is going to fall apart.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Total non-compliance. What do you think about the wearing of masks? I mean, they're saying that we have to do this for our health, and really, it's quite the opposite. It has quite the opposite effect on you, doesn't it, when you wear a mask all day?
Well, Max, you may not know, I actually got fired from my part-time psychiatry job because I refused to wear a mask. And I see it as a huge barrier and a huge problem for many reasons. Certainly there are the health reasons that you're breathing your own exhalations, which has, higher level of CO2 and also has toxins that your body's trying to expel. You're breathing in particulates from the mask itself, whatever it's made of. Or if there are synthetic chemicals used to make it, you're breathing in fumes of those chemicals as well. Plus, the masks are not really proven to have any benefit. There's even one study that shows that if you wear a cloth mask versus no mask, you have a higher chance of getting the flu, which makes sense because you're basically breathing back in your own toxins. So from a physical health point of view, they're really a lose-lose situation. They don't offer any protection, and they have all of these health detriments, I mean, including, which I didn't even mention, that they just restrict airflow. So you just can't breathe in and out as effectively. You know, many of the masks people are wearing are actually not even intended to protect the person wearing the mask. They're to keep you from spitting into an open surgical wound during surgery. You know, that's what surgical masks are really for. But then there's the emotional and psychological effects of it. You know, when you cover your face, that means you're ashamed, right? So we're putting people into a shame kind of feeling state. And that's why I see people looking down all the time when they're wearing these. They don't make eye contact. They're not behaving normally. Not only can you not see the facial expression, but you can't even hear the voice because it's all muffled coming through the mask. So you're creating a huge barrier to any interaction between people. You're putting people in a negative emotional state. Think about the babies that, you know, imprint on their mother's face. If their mother's wearing a mask, you know, they're going to not understand that situation. They're going to feel abandoned. So this has all sorts of untoward complications. And, you know, in addition to that, I think it's also very ritualistic. It's like the people wearing the mask are being initiated into some kind of new technocratic cult, and without even realizing it. So there's so many levels that the mask is such a dangerous and, you know, horrible thing.
Yeah, it's pure evil what these people are doing. And I've been saying to people, you know, it's a muzzle. It's not a mask. You know, and every time I see someone wearing them, I always just say, hey, it's actually bad for your health to wear a mask. You know, I walk into a shop and see a shopkeeper wearing one, and I'll say, oh, you look lovely today. Smile for me. You know. And then I'll say, it's actually really bad for your health to wear a mask. And I'll explain to them that they're breathing in all their bacteria all day. And just sort of think about what you're doing. And, you know, it's actually a muzzle. It's not a mask. And I make sure I say it loud enough for everybody in the line to hear me as well. I create a little bit of a scene when I go into shops these days, but I do it all very friendly and very upfront. But yeah, I mean, I think it's important that we do that sort of stuff. I really do. So, what do you see from here, man? What are you going to be doing from here? It's hard to go back to normal. It's hard to even think life is going to return to any semblance of normal from this point. You know, where do you see this going? You see a lot of people waking up, and do you see a big pushback coming, or do you see them getting away with all this? You know, I think actually, I think
Well,
I think they're pretty fearful. I think that they're stumbling over themselves, and I think they're in a rush to get this all done. And personally, I think they're shooting themselves in the foot. And if we just push back a little bit, I think we're going to make a big difference. That's my view anyway. But what do you think?
yeah, no, I agree. I mean, if there's some real pushback, I think it can really topple things over, and that's you know, definitely what I'm in favor of. But I don't know if there's going to be enough people who are willing to go out there and give that pushback or not. So I'm kind of the mind that I think that our society is going to be pretty divided in the future, and that there's going to be those people who are unable to understand what's really going on and just continue to cooperate with everything required. And probably they'll be all moving into the cities and, you know, be under a lot of control. And then there's the people, you know, hopefully like us and the listeners out there who are going to realize that they need to separate from that system and make some kind of life for themselves. And I think people are going to organize into small communities in a sort of new decentralized type of society. And, you know, that's what I'm planning to do. And I think this is a way that that people are going to figure out a better, freer way of living in the future. And my hope is that more and more people are going to be part of that. And this system that is coming to a major climax right now is going to just collapse out of existence. And there'll be, a new beginning for humanity, where we can do it in a much more enlightened way without, central control and authority.
Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? That would be a lovely dream. It is a dream. I mean, that's what I think we've all been working for. And I do as well. I mean, I see this as a huge opportunity with all the negative stuff that's happening. I mean, it's in your face now. I often said to people, there'll be no action until it comes to your backyard. Well, now it's in everybody's backyard. And if anybody ever had any doubt that all the governments are working together, I've been saying for years that this is just one multinational, multi-generational criminal cabal masquerading as a government, international government system, and they're all in control of their different little people farms, and they're all running the same show. And it's like, who wants to be the enemy this week? Who wants to do this? Who wants to do that? I mean, think about it. Look at it. No terrorism anymore. No wars. Everything's stopped. How much of that people think was real anyway and manufactured, No ISIS bombers want to go and blow up anyone anymore. I can't strap a bomb vest to myself and grow up a marketplace because I might catch COVID when I go there. It's so preposterous, isn't it? So I see it as a huge opportunity. And, if the media would just have someone like you on to just have an open discussion about this without trying to hack you to pieces and call you all these names and actually talk about it, just getting you on the mainstream media and people who can actually think clearly on the mainstream media would have so much benefit to people. You'd be able to get people to, a lot of people to snap out of their slumber, but the media won't do it. And I really see the media as even being more irresponsible in this situation than the government, I mean, the media is simply a propaganda arm of government now. There is no journalism anymore. And if they could just bring one line of truth to the people, it'd make a huge difference. But I guess it's just up to us as long as we've got these platforms. I don't know how long I'm going to last on YouTube. I've been kicked off Facebook, but see what happens, man. We just got to do the best we can. Anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
Well, I mean, just to echo your sentiments, and I think it's been quite a while since we had a free media. I mean, I don't think it existed in my lifetime even, but I think we do have real journalism, and a lot of it is on YouTube. But it's I don't think it's going to go away just because YouTube goes away. And so it's like people like yourself and James Corbett and many others. That's the future of information, right? We need independent researchers who are willing to say what the truth is. And that's really the spirit of journalism. We don't need any corporations that have to worry about the bottom line from their advertisers. That's how the media system got corrupted in the first place, right? So I'm really glad that we have this network of people that we can put this information out there. And I think over time, more and more people are going to wake up to the fact that the MSM is really, as you said, it's basically an intelligence operation or intelligence/public relations, and it's acting on the government and behalf of the elites and the bankers and all of the stakeholders who are, driving this plan behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's happened. Like independent journalism, it's just become a necessity. We were kind of forced to do it just to put our opinion out there because the job just wasn't being done anymore. And it's interesting how it's all happened. And they are attempting to squash it. When you look at how all the companies are controlled and who owns it all, it's quite remarkable when you see the ties, the family connections, and YouTube and the fact checkers, and then who the fact checkers are and who runs that organization. It's all the same people. It's all such a facade. But yeah, we've still got other platforms like BitChute and stuff. I mean, as long as the internet stays up, I don't know how long they'll even let us have access to it. And that's the problem, I think. It'll get to the point that if you don't take the vaccine, you won't be able to do anything. You won't even have access to the internet because it'll all be by biometrics and all that sort of stuff. So, when we go to these new communities, if we don't create our own type of communication system, we're going to be pretty much out on our own, and it's going to be very much a Hunger Games type of society. That's what we're heading into. That's what I can see happening anyway. But then I still see an opportunity to turn this around if enough people can get a wind of what's happening. So we got to keep pushing while we can. But anything else? I mean, where can people contact you? And have you got? I mean, what are you doing? You haven't lost your job over any of this, or
well, yeah, no, I did, as I was saying, but that's okay because I'm completely out of mainstream medicine. So but I do natural healing consultations, and that business has really been growing lately. And I'm going to be doing some group seminars, actually. So we'll be announcing that soon.
Cool.
And people can find me for those purposes on my website, which is andrewkaufmanmd.com. And also I have all of my videos backed up there as well. So if something that you wanted to check out has been deleted, please come there. And I've had trouble with BitChute. But I'm trying to get things up there, and library as well. Definitely check out my YouTube channel. It's just Andrew Kaufman under my name. And I do have some really good presentations there. And some stuff, not just about the virus, but also about general health type of topics, especially in the natural healing world.
Cool. That's excellent. You'll find you'll probably be fine with BitChute if you contact Ray. He's very, very approachable. I think they've been having a few problems with coding, the amount of people that have been switching over to BitChute, and I think really sort of overloading their servers. But I had a bit of an issue with some videos going up there, but then they contacted me and said, "Hey, we've sorted it out." So if you approach them, I'm sure they will, and they'll see this anyway. Hey, Ray, Andrew needs his because Ray checks out all my videos. I mean, they're very supportive of me on BitChute. So Andrew needs.
Oh well, that's that makes me feel a lot better about them censoring people down the road.
Yeah. Well, you can hook up your YouTube account to BitChute, so you've only got to upload it once, and then it's on both servers. So you hook both accounts.
Oh, that's great.
So BitChute will actually grab your YouTube videos, and then if they eventually kick you off YouTube, well, all your videos are still there on BitChute, and you can just go over there. So they're very approachable. I'm sure he'll sort that out for you and have a look at your channel and get whatever it is you're trying to do all worked out. So thanks for coming on, having a chat, brother. It's been really good to talk to you. And hopefully next time.
Yeah, same here.
In Mexico, if travel's ever allowed again. Have you seen what they're doing to the airports? Did you see that video that I uploaded the other day of Abu Dhabi airport? It's
no. What did they do? I haven't checked that out.
I'll send you a link after this to a video that I uploaded the other day, and the start of the video is Abu Dhabi airport. They've got it all fully set up with, you got to go through a booth, get sprayed with this stuff to detoxify you, and get
oh my gosh,
taken, and biometrics and facial recognition, and they've even got social distancing in the car park where they blocked off every second car because the cars can't be too close together. It's incredible. Like, if this is going to be the future of travel, well, I'm glad I'm well traveled, and
I think what we'll have to do is get enough people to chip in and buy a private plane, and then we can fly that around to bring everyone around from place to place on the circuit.
Yeah, that'll be the only way we're going to do it. Better get buy our own boat or something, But
yeah, there you go.
Really good to talk to you, and we'll have to stay in touch, and I'll have you on again. If anytime you want to come on, if you've got any news, if you got anything you want to say, just send me a hi on Skype, and I'll get you straight on, and we'll talk about it. And thanks for doing this.
All right, we'll do that.
All right, brother. Take care. I'll stop the recording.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was great to be here.
All right, man.